Alright, this is the first video back from being censored by YouTube for an entire week for talking about women being abusive. That's right. They're some of the only people next to Jews, and this isn't about Jews, okay, for a second, or for the forever, but that there's such a high premium, rightly so in the case of Jews, strangely not always in the case of women, that nothing to do with Jews, protect women from being violent to men. Protect women who are violent to men. Prejudice. Yeah. Extreme prejudice against men. And I see it, I feel it, and it is a reality. It is a delusional reality, so it's not an absolute reality. You would say, oh, I mean, there's got to be a reality on the earth where women aren't abusing men right now. And it's like, yeah, that'd be a nice thought, wouldn't it? How funny that. Now let's notice what she's laughing about. She's laughing about any measure that I have sensibly ever taken to protect myself from her aggression and her sexually predatory behavior, just like her father and her older brother, sexual predators. It's not about sex. It's not about sex. What it is about is control. People can win. Yes. And that was it. I mean, you don't like someone. You looked at that photo and said, look at how nervous and anxious I was. Problem with aggression. Mom had already been raped. Who really couldn't take care of her properly. And isn't a very nice person. You know, he's a person, just not a very nice person to her. And she wasn't always nice to him. It's impossible to say that, but knowing how deviant that is and how aggressive he is. I'm not going to let you micromanage me. Stop micromanaging everything. You want to bring more flowers, bring more flowers. Predators micromanage people. And what happened in that house for Dad, that was his heyday. That was his masterwork. He got to micromanage the police. He micromanaged his children. He micromanaged me. He micromanaged Leighton. Leighton micromanaged his friend. Everyone micromanages. And he's still micromanaging. Baron told me, you're not a victim. After having my shoulder dislocate 20 times. And after telling me he doesn't want to hear about how that feels, the impact that's had on my life. It means nothing. You just gotta put it together and make use of it all. Yes. I remember when I was in Campus, I realized I thought, maybe I should say something. Like, what did I do? You know, like, what did I do? They're not regular humans. They're not normal people. Normal people don't do that. Normal people don't think that. Well, consider myself lucky. Yeah, oh, I think that's hilarious. Sexual abuse with women. People trying to tell me what to drink. It's like you're gonna tell me what I want to drink. Thanks. See that creepy energy. Why do you think I'm homeless? No, wait a second. Why are you talking? Sorry. What do I do? Just be private about my own business today. All right with you? Thank you. You have a good day now, y'all. That's solid. Twice. Almost every single, a long time woman while walking by her. And you see these. It's like, I don't think so. But I like it. So, this is my first video back. Thursday. I haven't even started my day yet. I'm standing outside the vet with my mom, explaining to her that she might not understand how often and how much I get sexually abused walking around, and that how much I like going to a gas station where the only people I deal with are men. And I go and get the things that I need, and it's perfect. I had just everything I needed, and I'm good to go, right? And you think, great, yeah, great. And I said, Mom, I love dealing with men. No offense to you, but it's like, I get sexually harassed a lot, and explaining her a few things. And she goes in and does it. And while I'm out there for 15 minutes, standing in various areas, because they won't let more than one person in, outside in the cold, I get sexually assaulted by 2 women in a 15-minute period today. 2 women in a 15-minute period. 2 completely different women, 2 completely different economic backgrounds, 2 completely different body sizes, but both psychopaths. Yeah. So, and psychopath, let me be clear, there's lots of different ways to talk about it, but it's the same thing as schizophrenia and narcissism. They're all the same thing. They just broke them up into different pieces, so you never see how crazy people are, right? People use euphemisms, Oh, they just have a creative way with the truth, or, that's just the way they roll. So people just hurt people because that's the way they roll. So in this sense, people who aren't connected to reality are psychopaths. They're missing something about reality. Their picture of reality is flawed. It is missing. And it probably follows through to their brain. It follows through to their sexual mores. You don't have to have sex, but it follows through. It's not that there are such and such a thing that is, it's perverted to masturbate or anything like that, or to watch porn or something. Although I have things I would say about porn, about what you're watching, and who you're watching. But it follows through their lives. And they will, if they have a child or someone in their life like me, it will follow through their life. And they will, on some level, know that this person is a psychopath. And then, because, they're schizophrenics too, this means that they're not always a psychopath, are they? Not in all their capacities. So it's like, they're not a complete, utter psychopath. It's not like they're just all cold, malicious, sadistic, cunning, and calculating every second of the day, right? And there can be many, many pleasant times with a psychopath. Many pleasant times. Because they are still people, aren't they? Just because you have a cold doesn't mean you're not a person anymore, right? But cold is the right word. Very cold in certain ways, right? The warmth of the sun is related to the communicative power of the sun. Warm communication is concise, observant, deferential as need be, proportional, courteous, right? Mindful or aware of the person to whom you're addressing. Enough, at least, that it's even worth addressing them at all. Enough that you know how not to offend them, right? So essentially, coming up to a stranger right away, man or woman, that you don't know, you have the most potential to offend somebody, right? Are we following that correctly? You see how that skews together? Okay. And there's other things that maybe have more potential, like an in-law or something, I don't know. But essentially, coming up to a stranger, based on the person, maybe the prejudices, this is where the most amount of offense could be committed in many cases. And it's where psychopaths will begin to hate someone. It can be something like not enough eye contact the first time you meet them, right? Didn't pay them enough attention. Ooh, insufficient attention. I have one psychopathic woman I know. They're all psychopaths that I've known. I've never known a woman who wasn't a psychopath. I'm sorry to say, but not in the womb and not anywhere else. But it's important to parse it out rightly, you know. And so, to put it in different terms, instead of, it's like, well, if you love somebody, let's say they're your mom, and they put you into hospital, 10 times all by themselves, and they allow other people to put you in hospital, and they don't protect you, and they don't do anything but get violent at you when you try to speak on your behalf about the impact that any or all of this has had upon your life. Okay? Does that sound normal to you? What it involves 20 dislocations of your shoulder? So that's not the realm of normal. That's abnormal psychology, right? And so I could speak at length, mostly just in the moment, because different days, different things occur to me, different things stir in my mind about what things I went through. In the catastrophic order, I had basically gone to a large hadron collider of psychopathy and aggression and violence. And so psychopathy, aggression, violence. Can you and I both be violent? Yes. Can we both be aggressive? Yes. Does that mean we're psychopaths? No. I almost would actually separate violence and psychopathy. Not all violence is psychopathic. If you're driving down the highway and you accidentally hit a mailbox, that's violent. But you didn't do it on purpose. Now, if you were drunk, that's different. If you hit the same mailbox every year on the same day, then we're right, all kinds of things that would make people suspicious in terms of the whole story about you and this mailbox. But if you literally just have never had a traffic ticket, you hit the person's mailbox, you have no connection to these people, you've never met them before, you have no mutual acquaintances, and you just happen to hit their mailbox, right? So and so, just an accident. Maybe someone turned in front of you, and maybe you were going 5 kilometers over the speed limit or something, an accident, a pure accident. Can be replaced, right? All that sort of thing. Right? So that's still violent. It's violent to your mailbox, right? If you're waiting for some mail that day and you don't get it, that could be violent. So if the government takes away your support payments, that seems kind of violent. Now notice what I said, seems kind of violent. So you might say I'm switching out the definition of violent. You could say, well, yeah, violence is when someone tries to hurt someone and they do, right? Violent is anything, even a sport where people are making abrasive physical contact with each other, where there's a heightened risk of injury. You could say that's violent. You could say boxing is violent. Is it the same violence as a man or woman who emotionally abuses their partner, right? Who doesn't get paid for the various bouts where they're forced to defend themselves and then usually stand and take the accusation that they're really the bad one. Can you imagine being locked with anyone, man or child, where someone, say, bigger than you, someone with some more economic advantage or social advantage, which is easy enough to get, you don't realize how disadvantaged you might be socially, right? Until you divorce from your wife or your husband, or until something happens in your family and people take sides, right? So when there's violence, you see who's in the advantage and who's not. So after my family was violent to me, my family still remained in contact with various relatives. I didn't. Right away, like a clinical psychologist and a clinical investigator would say, well, I'm looking at Landon in your family. He seems to have lost all contact with his entire family, and none of you did. Why do you think that is? And you would be touching a rat's nest if you could find a way to objectively, clinically interview the people in my family. And I would sit, of course, on pins and needles to get your conclusion. Let's say 20 clinical psychologists go interview my family about various things I claim happened to me and go listen to their stories. I've asked my mom for a quarter of a century to ask my family, anyone, because they don't share any warmth or communication with me of any kind. And what little I've had over the years doesn't show any interest in my well-being, considering catastrophic changes to my life from their aggression and violence. And just to tell me what they think of me. What's their overall impression? What do they think about me? What would they like to tell me that they know about me as a person? About what my life is like and why? And it never happens. It just comes out through passive aggression. Oh, yes. So both women today breached normal social boundaries. They were provoked, but not in an explicit sense. They were too easily provoked, you could say. You'd have to do studies on these types of things, controls and stuff like that, on how people respond to various situations. I mean, there's so much that can be done within the vast gray area of human so-called etiquette. But I would say yes to sexual assaults today. I've noticed that the vet, when I'm there with my mom, never makes eye contact with me. So, I don't know if that's just who he is as a person, but I see his face and he looks just like a man I used to know that works another town away. And he seems to be an aggressive man. He's a very good doctor, but a very aggressive person. Yeah. Yeah, and it's scary. And so it's interesting, while I'm at that building, different 90 degrees, just places where I can stand and look at the sun, that I receive a kind of aggression, a kind of sexual-based aggression from two different old women, actually one probably closer to my age. And you're just out of touch with reality. Yeah. And you can just feel the energy, right, before you start talking, because people, if these things happen to you, you'll find you'll use euphemisms in your own mind. You edit it right away. But what I look at is the first thing I feel. First feelings. Before you form words, before you even form thoughts, your feelings can form about someone and how they're approaching you. Did you know that? You can have complete feelings, a complete readout of how you feel. What you do in society is then say, well, okay, I'm just going to ignore that. That was just the chaff, as the ship approached me. And then it's like, oh, and then you start enduring this interaction. So one is that I noticed that I was enduring these interactions. They were impolite. But once you start using words, it doesn't seem like sexual assault anymore. But I know that I would never come up to a human being, much less one of the opposite sex, anywhere, much less someone who seemed in any sense vulnerable or by themselves, the way that both of these women did. something is missing. And essentially could have incited arguments. One could educate such people in a way that they would have been defensive right away. Right? In fact, on the level that you're feeling this aggression, they're probably not even aware that they're being aggressive. Pay attention to yourself when you're interacting in public. If there's a moment where you don't give someone the same respect you would give a police officer or your aged mother, right? And it can happen, right? You're shopping, you walk in front of somebody, you're driving. That's fine, it happens, right? But you look around, especially when you're not in a car, you're not at a shopping center, in a quiet morning, and the sun is out, and everything is positive and peaceful. And all you're doing is standing on a certain location on the earth, certain location in relation to vaginas. Okay, so compute vagina proximity. And you're standing on a piece of earth, and I can tell you multiple stories. I can tell you 3 right off the top of my head. I'm going to say, but just by standing in a particular location in relation to vaginal openings of living females, okay, you can coordinate and triangulate that. You will receive aggression. You will feel aggressed. Right? Why? Right? But what I found out, you see, is a lot of these people don't know who they're dealing with. Now, that sounds a bit obtuse and angry, but a part of what's happening is that in every case I notice, in a sort of a category of observations that I make, that I sometimes think, like, if that's somebody's wife or girlfriend or mother or grandmother, someone should tell them not to talk to strange men that way, but it sounds threatening as soon as you say that. It's like, oh, what, are you going to hit them? It's like, okay, let's try this again. In the wide realm of human mutual etiquette, which you probably enjoy all the time among those that you rightfully and proudly claim to be your economic level, right? You may not notice, but you deprive other people of that for all kinds of reasons, not even malicious ones, but you do it anyway, right? Or you talk to them the way you would talk to a child. People do it out of ignorance. People do it when a sense of concern or pity or learned helplessness projected onto some minority or person, right, does not come with enough actual real-time knowledge of that person or those people, and doesn't come with enough. It's sort of like if you're going to approach homeless people, you should have the instincts of a soldier. You see, homeless people have really good instincts. That's why their animals are always really healthy. Right? They're actually very intelligent animals because they get to be real, right? And if you approach them and you're not instinctually developed, it's like going up to a dog who has more intelligence than Fifi, the average Shih Tzu, for instance. They would bite you. And you would say, oh, that's an angry dog. But someone could say, you didn't come up to that dog the right way. You came up to him like a pansy. You came up like, fearfully. You came up with like a complete lack of awareness of what you're approaching, right? You just didn't go through a sequence that another animal would go through, or a decent human being that tells the animal everything's okay, right? Can you come up to someone in a way where they would feel everything's not okay? Has anyone ever been passive aggressive to you and you're like, maybe they're talking the way that somebody would, it seems passably like normal, but you feel that something's not okay? Imagine a dog and you come up to them and you make them feel that way in a way that only humans can. And it's still not your fault. No one's saying like, but that dog may bite you. No one expects everyone to be a fucking dog whisperer. That's why dogs have to be trained or dumbed down to a certain level, right? Now, a healthy dog won't just go and bite someone because they're nervous or don't know how to approach another animal, because dogs aren't supposed to do that to people. But if that animal does get that way, It's because the trainer or the owner and the person have a weak energy, right? A sick or a weak energy. The dog shouldn't do it, right? I mean, I've seen dogs that pit bull, and I wouldn't approach them. I'm way too terrified. I just don't want to, It's like, no. I mean, pit bull owners and German Shepherd owners know, like, a lot of people aren't going to just come up to their dog if they know anything about animals, and I do. And I've been there close hand what these animals can do to the human body. So it's like, what I'm really saying is not I hate these animals. I'm saying I don't know enough about their body language to predict. Because when they go and start to kill a human or a baby, which is what they're both trained to do, especially the German Shepherd, it doesn't matter what you know and what you thought anymore. And the owner's probably going to say it never happened before, right? So it's not really their fault. Bad day for everyone. It's considered an accident. Did you notice that? Ask any German Shepherd and pit bull owners, hey, if someone's pit bull in the world has killed another human being or a baby, if a German Shepherd has bit the skull of a baby in the owner's own family, in their home, do you think that's an accident? Ask them that. Do they think it's an accident? Because if that's an accident, or if it's not, you should never have a German Shepherd. Ever. That's what your instincts tell you. Why would you have a dog, right, that has ever done that? It dishonors all of that species, all of that breed. It dishonors dogs everywhere. A real wolf, a real dog would never do that. And yet humans to this day train and have trained German Shepherds to murder human beings all over the world. The US Army does it. Other armies do it. Right? They train them to kill. Oh sure, the stuff you see on TV is like they sniff bombs and they're really just amazing creatures. And it's like, it's not their fault, it's not the German Shepherd's fault. Right? But think of what they're bringing. I mean, why wouldn't they? It's the army. They kill people, right? That's what they do. That's why you respect them. That's why they wear the nice Halloween costumes, right? They look so handsome. We have this idea of being clean cut because of the way soldiers homosexually have their fashion, right? That's the fashion of soldiers. If you watch Taps or Platoon and they have their hair cut and all this, it's the fashion. It's the homosexual kind of white supremacist look, right? And that's considered by rednecks to this day clean cut. Clean cut. That's right. You have to look like a homosexual Marine. That's what clean cut is, right? Clean cut. Remember that. Clean cut. There's nothing that makes you cleaner because you shave your head. In fact, I used to shave my head, and I find it's actually much more unhygienic than growing your hair, right? For lots of obvious and not so obvious reasons. Quite frankly. That reminds me, I did lizard medicine today. Right, you okay? Yeah. I think a lot of women are demonically possessed. Not all. And I understand that most people wouldn't notice this, but as I've been, I'm not homeless, but basically people, I think, can see me as a homeless person. I'm in that spectrum of human ignorance. And because especially white people, like especially women, don't pick up who men really are. So I find women are the first to be convinced that I'm homeless over a comparable male, right? And sometimes it comes with sexual excitement, it comes with aggression, it comes with territoriality, because I've tested them. And when I challenge them and they become more, they start off sexually precocious, sexually assaulting me, and then they become more territorial, and then they become more murderous towards me, and then I get physical effects to my body. And then they involve more people, and they can get those people to take more and more risk, to be more and more aggressive to you. I watched this over a year and a half, right? And I'm prevented, in a sense, from writing something publicly about it because I'm not sure legally where I would stand in that. Essentially, once you start alleging crimes can be alleged of you, right? To write a book about, hey, such and such, a local woman who's not to be named sexually assaulted me in this park for a year and a half. And I'm someone who's been involved, abused, or victimized, and has studied, and is still studying every day. I have so much material to go through. How human beings become violent and why they become aggressive. And why it's important at times, in shock or not, to look at what state of mind they're in. If you don't know the state of mind, you will skip over it. It's so hard to understand how seemingly normal people can be violent, right? And not just like they lose their temper and punch a hole in a wall, which is violent enough, right? But more than that, to get to laying on hands upon a child or spouse, right? To physically dominate another human being, right? Okay? And how in their mentality, which is schizophrenia and psychopathy and personality disorder, narcissism and all these things, which are broken down, but they're one complex. This person can seem normal to lots of people. And even if their victim is their son or their wife, they will basically live life like, what makes it worse is that they are people. If it was just some disease that you could take pills for, and people are like, oh wait, that shouldn't have happened. Your husband's going to go to a clinic for the schizophrenically damned for a year, and they come back and like, no more abuse, right? But that doesn't happen. And because your brain automatically wants to settle into the best of all worlds, right? Once you're in an environment with an aggressive family member, right, your brain is automatically going into denial. It's the best of all worlds theory of your reality. Best of all worlds, everything's fine, best of all worlds, best of all worlds. And you can't control when it stops being the best of all worlds, unless you just get really good at ignoring it, right? So that denial, even if the person in the family never has a drug addiction, is a drug in itself, and it will be a critical, if invisible, substrate to the formation of every other social and financial alliance in their lives. And it's so common that you can look at how a cult behaves, and most or much of it applies to how every human group behaves, from the family to everything else, to a church council meeting, to a yoga school, everything. Depending, of course, in your estimation, how much is worth really paying attention to. So when I talk about sexual assault, I talk about anything that makes me uncomfortable. But before words, my emotional body says something's wrong. I'm in the presence of something wrong, right? Wrong feelings toward me, wrong ideas about me, lowered inhibitions about personal space, shared space, public space, right? What we have the right, if someone's standing on the street, you don't walk right up to them and expect them to move out of the way when you have somewhere else to walk, right? Well, that's what happened to me with this fat elderly woman, right? It might just be stupid, right? And it was nothing purposeful for me except just standing somewhere to listen to the sun off this property. And she had lots of room to walk around, no big deal. Right? And it's just a moment when it passes. And then it happens again. Right? Where I'm standing becomes offensive somehow to another female. Now I'm standing somewhere completely different, under a tree, in the sun. And this is considered offensive too. And so I move again, twice in 15 minutes. I am disturbed while peacefully going about my meditation in one of the last bits of sun we may have for a while. And I'm glad I did. It was literally the last chance I had to spend time in the sun. In both of the last instances I had, for this day, or perhaps for a few days, were interfered with by sexually predatory white females. Isn't that fascinating? On the first day back of my YouTube channel, and on the same day that I managed to talk to my mom about some of the sexual harassment I get while I'm out, and all in that same place, that same hour, that same 20-minute span. What are the chances of that? Of all those things happening at the same time, and other things besides? Right? Isn't that something? Both niggling in my ear and interfering in my meditation. Not the first time an elderly woman has done that, by the way. Right? Just unobservant, borderline rude. Right? They know what sex I am. I know what sex they are. Right? They have plenty of public space for them to use. But based on a proprietary prejudice, probably incident to where they're emerging from to begin with, where I'm free to be viewed by several females while standing pleasantly, peacefully, looking and listening to the sun. I think I was listening to the sun. Looking, listening. So it was just with all the other things I have on my heart, right? And think if I didn't have anyone else in my life. Think if I was totally homeless, right? And I think of the shock I woke up with in a loving household that I'm dealing with in my life. And just, you would say, vanilla sexual harassment in your mind. Not full-on assault. Well, assault and harassment are the same thing. You see, these words, they're made to make everything worth as much to the legal system, but it's not worth as much to you, right? This is a psychopath. This is an eating disorder, Most vegans and vegetarians are psychopaths. Have you ever noticed that? Who have eating disorders. Okay? I mean, quite, irrespective of the health benefits or not of their respective way of eating. And it's been in front of me my whole life, particularly females. But what's interesting about this writing or this way of talking and this knowledge is that I myself just ignored it. I was in denial. And how many vegans and vegetarians I've met that are just full-blown psychopaths. I don't think that as someone who is victimized by them, that these people have the ability to care about anybody. I know that's not absolutely correct, but that's the way you feel when a psychopath hurts you. It's not just a little bit of hurt. People talk about breaking up with their girlfriends and say it hurts and they're sad. Maybe they say some bad things they regret, and eventually they sort of make up and be friends or something, right? And with a psychopath, it's totally different. And the more they hurt you, right, the more they want something about you to stick around, right? They've hooked you in some way with a lure. And the lure is how their personality is meant to glom onto your emotional, physical, and mental energy field. And a psychopathic, schizophrenic female then takes an imprint of you, right? And in this imprint, now that they've managed to bring a certain energy and get you to submit to them, which is very subtle, by the way, and you'll probably only see it in retrospect, okay? It's very hard to see these things in real time. No one talks to someone who's pleasant, who's a human being, who has needs and feelings, even if they're a psychopath, and thinks, hey, I think this woman is probably a psychopath. Maybe it's my turn to talk about my boundaries. And the thing is, they can't. They take an imprint of someone, and that's, in that imprint, all you will ever be to them. And it includes everything you ever thought you could be, as long as it's in their words. Okay? So at this point, basically, this relationship is never really legitimate, and it's never going to grow. Ever. In fact, at some point, it's going to want to. Right? Like an anus needs to open in order to let some shit out. because it's going to become septic. And at that point, right, psychopaths, again, they don't know they're psychopaths. We're just talking about regular people now. Well, this is where they can become more violent. This is where they can become more charismatic, more mesmerizing, or an opportunity to keep you closer when you start fighting them. Because they know that you need them now on some level. They want you to need them. Because how they see you, their image of you, is, despite whatever else they might say, is just someone who needs them. Someone who needs their help, their expertise. They like the idea of having sex with someone who's inexperienced. And I know guys fantasize about that. Maybe girls fantasize. But that's not the same as rape. That's not the same as treating someone that way, right? It's not the same as treating someone who has everything to learn from you about everything, right? And you never get to know anything about anything, right? Everyone has equal amounts of knowledge, essentially, in terms of what knowledge is, which is like thought potential, right? What good is knowledge until it realizes thought potential? You have more potential thoughts in some ways you get older, and you have other less potential thoughts. And you think, well, that's a good thing. Maybe when you're 90, when you're 80, you don't think, oh, I want to have a poopy. It's poopy time. Or when you're 25, you don't think, oh, I got to go poopy. Can my mommy help me? You don't have that thought potential, right? But there might be other thought potentials that you would want to preserve. Openness of mind and heart, trust, right? But who do you trust? If your mother and your father are psychopaths, right? If your home disappears all around you, but you don't realize it. It's not the same as anyone else's home. It's not a crack den. It's better than some, not as good as others. Your family shows up, you have a family portrait on the wall, right? You have your favorite chair, your TV, your room, posters, what have you. But somewhere along the way, what made this house a house went away. And you didn't know it. You did, but you didn't. It becomes a new kind of arcane shadow knowledge. When did the home go away? And how does it affect your siblings? That the safety of that home, and so that home, because a home has to be safe to be a home, right? Went away. When do you think that happened? Now, if that happens, should your parents notice it? You know, it's like, whoa, where'd my home go to? Right? There's a joke about Sherlock Holmes and Watson, but it reveals how people can lose their homes. And Dr. Watson asks Holmes, like, what are your thoughts about the situation as they stare up at the stars? And he said, oh, galaxies, infinite space, and all this bullshit from astronomy, right? And Dr. Watson said, oh, I meant, what do you think happened to our tent? Right? And so even Sherlock Holmes has not noticed the obvious. So a child stands no chance in noticing where, when, and how their home went away. And as it goes away, their brain adapts. And it makes up its own home. And that's called denial. Right? And it's not a bad thing. It's a big part of all human life. Right? When denial replaces the really safe home. Okay? Which happens to pretty much everyone. Okay? And we would accept maybe the people who rule the world, who play all the actors of the world, and all the historical figures and doctors, and every prominent and not so prominent person on YouTube. I mean, look how little it takes to be popular on social media, right? Look how little it takes. This is a concentrated effort. This is culture. The internet wasn't the beginning of the freedom of information. It was the untold landscape, the next landscape of controlling humans. Because you just create culture. You just create culture. That's what they've been doing for 1,000 years, creating culture. Right? Everything's fine, from electric cars to everything else, as long as the culture and the creation of culture is being maintained. So the military haircut becoming that of a clean-cut person. So people who had long hair were considered dirty in the West. That's right. Long hair, a source of male strength, right? Even in the biblical sense. And they want to cut it off of everybody. Men always have short hair around here. Most of them, short hair, short hair. My dad always wanted me to cut my hair. And then I shaved my head and he didn't like that either, right? It was a very small bandwidth. My dad had a peculiar and quite sickening interest in making my hair look like his. My dad, I lost contact, in a sense, with reality as I got older. Certainly, in some sense, because the world around me lost contact with reality. And so, people are understandably defensive if I say, psychopaths and schizophrenics are people who don't live in reality. People who sexually assault people, like women who sexually assault people, don't live in reality. They live in a reality that answers to stimuli of a most superficial and bigoted nature. Human beings, which is on the way to explaining how human beings can be provoked to kill each other, like in massacres, in genocides. Because most people aren't in touch with reality to begin with. How can people become Christian? Right? Because you weren't in touch with reality to begin with. Right? And it's not a complete and utter condition. And it's something that's so subjective, you might say, that it's probably only something that anyone could suffer if you would think they had problems with reality. But the fact is, if you feel you have problems with reality, that doesn't mean you're a schizophrenic, right? You're sensible that the torsion of reality in your home and in your life as you grow changes in a way that is not consistent with reality, right? Oh, sure, everything changes, but someone touching your pee-pee when you're 5 is not consistent with reality. Morality is reality, right? That's not consistent with reality. That's not a real thing to do, is it? The person who did that does not know what reality is, doesn't know the reality of the situation, and probably will never learn the reality of the impact of that behavior. But you or I, we would never do that because we sense the reality of how awful it is, not the concept, not the abstract. Oh, right, I'm not supposed to touch my sister's vagina, right? I think I read that somewhere. You would automatically, as I talk this, be disgusted with what you know about the reality of touching a child's vagina, right? You're disgusted by that. You understand how the reality of doing that is how wrong that is. How wrong the reality of someone doing that will become the horrifying reality of that child, and how wrong and unreal that would be to them, and how much denial their brain would go into because it's so unreal, and how they might have trouble for the rest of their life talking about, much less getting certain people, let's say men, interested in what happened to them. They might be terrified of telling anyone. Look at what you've done to that person. Is that realistic? It's only real in so much as it's horrible and demonic. Right? The person who does that has no sense of how really wrong it is. Wrong for them is just an abstract concept. It's on the tree of good and evil, but it's not really wrong, right? These types of people can be Christians, they can be anything, but they'll believe anything as long as they can get away with what they want, right? Because they just think like lies. It's just words. It's just the truth. It's just a belief. It's just this. It's just, gets me what I want, right? And again, there's a spectrum of human beings because of stress and time constraints who will become more abstract in their thinking and perhaps unthinking in how they deal with various things. But we're talking about ways in which this leads to violence, right? And it's not just lazy human thinking. You and I could be stressed. We could have a car accident. Someone could hit us and we go into shock for 3 years or something. And we could make mistakes, or we could, through a laziness, we could offend, we could ask for coffee, maybe linger too much over her breasts if you have a brain disorder. Like, people can do all kinds of awful things due to laziness. You could be talking one day and be like, say something about women that's offensive, and someone would say you're a psychopath, but you're wrong, you're ashamed of yourself, and you're just talking at the mouth, had a long night at work, and you were stressed and fatigued, and you said something in public you should have saved for your YouTube channel or something, right? And it's wrong, and you feel ashamed of it, right? You know it's wrong. It's not wrong to feel that way because we all have crazy feelings about things, and we should. But maybe you shouldn't have said that with, the Girl Scout sitting over here or something, right? Now, I've seen people who don't have that reaction, who can talk about things around children, and they don't seem to have any sense of who's around them. They don't change their tone around children at all. And my Uncle Vic was like this. And it was just like, wow. And my Auntie Penny, and I could see like these people. Oh, I have to go pee, so I'm just kind of thinking what's going on here, I guess. Then I thought, okay, like without saying psychopath and all these things, it's like, that's a remarkable thing. And while someone could say, well, you seem to really happen upon these negative things, it's like, well, I do for a reason, because I see patterns, right? And it's true, you could have sit there and listened to my Uncle Vic swear and curse in front of my brother's children, sitting there, who's never even met him before. Not once, sort of quieting himself or showing any humility, because it's not really something, right, that's that important, really. We're going to leave and never see him ever again. It's the last time I'm ever going to see him. And he has nothing but insults for me. Right? And when I stayed in his house, it was nothing but aggression. Quiet ambivalence to my well-being. Like I wasn't a person. There was no family to welcome me in. Living in his house for a while was like my first job. And no one told me what to do. And I had this really negative experience, and essentially you could say, well, that's your fault. And the sense from my Uncle Vic would be, I think if you talk to my Uncle Vic, he's passed on, he would say, oh, that's your own fault, that's your own fault. And so this sense of being guilty for your experiences of domestic abuse, and being targeted by members of your own family with overly aggressive behavior. Well, targeted, if you treat it in an aggressive way, you're essentially being targeted. It just goes without saying, but when you say targeted, people think, oh, you're saying there's you're limiting the number of instances that a reasonable person thinks are going to qualify as domestic assault. When you say it's targeted, it's like, oh, come on, targeted. How much aggression is targeted? You weren't targeted. It's like, and all of a sudden, someone listening there, nodding her, all of a sudden knows everything about me and everything, because the word targeted just triggers people, right? Targeted. Right, well, if somebody shoots you and they had to aim at you to shoot you, you kind of feel like they target you, right? When people are talking to you, they're targeting their words at you, aren't they? Right? Who am I targeting my words at? Anyone and everyone. I'm going to go back. I'm too tired to walk through the forest like this today. I'm just not into it. But I got my pee. It's cold. Yeah, I went into that gas station. It's like that I'm not going to go into anymore. And my mom, for some reason, sent me in there to get a cup of coffee for her. Isn't that odd? I just went to that gas station for the first time this week. I don't like it. I told her I'm not going to shop there anymore. And the next day, we're doing something across the street, and she wants me to get a cup of coffee from this place. Yeah. Right? Isn't that odd? And by the way, another female stalker of mine tried to send me a package again. So that's 3 forms of sexual harassment, right, in one day so far. 3 forms. So I ask you, right, what's going on? Did they? Why are you putting it that way? I'm just waiting for my mother. Yeah. Yeah, it's cold. I'm standing in the place. And I find women extremely aggressive. And I find that female aggression is more accepted by society than male aggression. So a lot of how women behave, that is considered equality in the same way that men behave. Women actually get away with way more aggression in their behavior than men do. And there's more that's female aggression that humans, men and women, especially young boys, are taught to see as normal. Normal. Right? And I've actually watched this happen. I've studied this. I've watched it happen in real time. I have watched a white female teach her young boy sitting beside his sister that it's okay for her to violate him sexually. Do you understand? So you see where they're getting the aggression. It's passed on right in front of me. I was watching a training session, right? And people tell me who they are. I'm like, this is what a woman, wealthy economically woman, was teaching her young girl to do to her young boy in public. I've watched women of the same age shake and sexually molest young girls and boys in public. Mostly young girls, actually. Aggression. Oh my Lord, right? But it's considered normal. I've also studied this by most people. They accept it. Nobody calls the police. Nobody says anything. It's acceptable. Women's approval of violent behavior is considered all that's necessary. So not only women get to say that they're the most violated people in the world, but they get to apply this idea in every instance where it could do them any advantage. Now imagine a woman is a predator. How much advantage does she have over a man? And then how many men never say anything? How many children, boys and girls, never say anything about the violence of their mothers? Now, you look at my father. You switch gears for a second. I don't think I know or can say for sure that my father ever treated my mother properly. The violence that came from my father to me, and the violence that came from my sister and my father to me, which has never been addressed. That was intricate, long-standing, and had an impact of the most violent nature upon my physical body and my entire life for the last 25 years going. And these people live and work, and they're not sorry. Because someone who can do that, right? The only thing I need to do when I'm out here today is not figure out how sick and why, that shock will live in me the rest of my life. You can't get rid of it, right? My dad violated one of the most sacred things on earth. And it's hard to know if he should even be held responsible for it. If he really just didn't have any control over himself. And then why not? Right? And to separate it from my mother, who has listened to me from time to time, and visited, certainly a lot of her own violence upon me, that has demoralized me over the years. Yeah. Yes, I am. Permissible aggression. Women can hit the gas on aggression in their brains anytime. They can just punch the gas. They're like young drivers in a car. Just, they can punch the gas on aggression at any time. And I can read it physiologically. I've walked down here and been stared at by a female cougar while walking by in a way that if I had done that to a woman on any given day, I'm sure she would have called the police. You know? And you could see she's got a more passive female companion who's just sort of trying to pretend like this isn't happening. Right? It's incredible. And you slow these things down, you can see them and feel them because they send ripples through the ethers. These women's intentions toward me send ripples, and those ripples are giving me information about the nature of sexual abuse. It is very shocking how many women sexually abused or not sexually abuse men on a routine basis, just in the energy that they're putting out to men. And the inability, these could be seen as disabilities. For instance, psychopathy is a disability. The inability to notice and observe people sufficient in proportion to what they wish to ask of them, right? If you have a full shopping and babies and I come up and say, hey, can you give me $50 so I can get some meth and try to kill myself tonight? You've probably misread the situation, right? And so on and so on. But there's more subtle ways that people ask people for things without paying attention to who they're talking to. Right? Right? Sorry. People, and you can see like one lady's mind, so made up about the person they're looking at that it wouldn't even help to tell them anything else. Everything in them wraps around that because as a predator, they are very much honed in on their prey and they're excited by them. Nice chilly morning.
Yes.
And they're honed in on their prey and they're excited. And it's invisible. Just like, you could see the same thing as a woman. You could see that as a man doing it. So their energy, though they might seem Christian or whatnot, is they're honing in on their prey. And it just so happens that I'm an attractive middle-aged man, around about their age. And I've learned to factor this in, in the types of women that approach me, who are usually quite lonely, right? And they fill that void in their life with charitable gift of their sickness to people who look vulnerable enough to need it and prey on them. They objectify and project onto them. It's a slithering mass of unwanted attention that you can feel, but you can't really put a name to. And it goes by in a second. There's no way this person should be approaching you. Do you see a child standing here? The long way talking about. Use your adult voice. Okay? Show strength to people. Okay? Do you know anything about the sun? The sun is strong. Show strength to people. Not pity. Nobody wants your pity. Okay? Right? Your pity is worthless. your energy. Man, have you done sharing your positive energy with me? You done? I just wanted to get over now. Go back. Is that okay with you? Good. And if you start matching wits with the underlying slithery poison coming out of these white women's mouths, you'll get in trouble, right? They're like verbal vaccines. They're just full of all kinds of shit that doesn't need to be in there. And all you have to do is spend a second in their presence, right? The woman I saw, she could clear all the homeless people out of town just by walking up to them the way she did. You know, it's not pleasant. It's unpleasant. And it leaves a sickly feeling. You're already cold. You know, you're already just found a moment to enjoy yourself, right? And a white woman comes along and ruins your day and ruins your morning. Hey? Just because there's just a subtle number of conditions that you're enjoying in the cold and in the sun. Standing in one place you've never stood before, and after 30 seconds of standing there, a white woman comes up and sexually assaults you because of how you appear to her. Because you think her pity or her weak energy or something is what you require. And as she opens her lips and as she looks in her eyes, you can tell she thinks she's a being of love and light. She really believes that. She has a similar body type to other women I've seen. They believe they're beings of love and light, whether they're Christian or New Age. And they think their energy is so good that they can just share it with anybody and it makes their lives a better place. And they're really positive people, right? If you believe this nonsense, right? But no one ever tells them how this feels to another person. And you know, with people like this or more aggressive women, that that's not going to matter to them. They're already made up that their identity has claims upon your identity. And that's the same as child abuse. Their identity, right? Not their heart, not their voice in a sound sense, but their sense of identity in the lower chakras. And so even a small conversation could be seen as territorial when someone's identity demands that you take and play a certain role in their life because they've known you for 3 seconds, right? And a level of identity. Okay? Yeah. Right? And from the vet, who won't allow me in because they only allow one person at a time, right? A vet, 2 nurses, right? Because they're scared of getting COVID, right? And has very strict conditions on their door. So I'm standing out in the cold. And that's it. These are the conditions to be sexually harassed or assaulted twice in 15 minutes in a place 2 places I've never stood before in my life while seeing the last of the sun for a few days. Isn't that amazing? On the same day, within 15 minutes of mentioning, for one of the rare times I've mentioned to my mom, the extraordinary nature and range of sexual abuse that I get from women while I'm walking around, right? And I'm cold already, and I'm getting cold energy from these women, right? Cold. There's nothing warm about it. Oh. Really? So if my mother were wearing this hat, they would do the same thing? These are the, could be seen, the chronicles of the aggression of middle-class homeowners to innocent people in the community and how they talk to them, how they interact with them, how they treat them. What we don't know is how they really think of them when they're not congratulating themselves on how generous and spiritual and kindly they probably are. I'll take something. What do you see me doing? I think what you see. It's quite incredible, right? So how common do you think it is? If I can just come to a location at 8:30 a.m. in the day and get sexually assaulted twice in a span of actually probably 10 minutes. 10 minutes. On a day when a stalker sends me something in the female, which is like absolutely horrifying. It's been probably over 5 years now. This person's been stalking me from another country, right? Think about that. I think they've put things online with my picture so people locally will see it. I mean, this person is a psycho. They are a psycho. I found like one of the biggest psychos in the world. I attracted from this family in Portugal. I think she must be 19 years old right now, right? Another woman who doesn't take no for an answer. And it just affected my day, right? I've had a delicate week. And again, you read your first impression. Is it positive or negative? And you see what that feels like, right? You need positive energy. Otherwise, it makes you sick. If people gave you no energy, it's better than giving you negative energy. What's worse is that people who have some of the most negative energy in their system think they're some of the most positive people. And that is a lot of women walking around who have a lot of excess yin. I could see on this woman, she was very similar to another woman I met who had a lot of very saddlebaggy hips, very wide hips, and a lot of extra flesh around the ass. You could see very badly defined buttocks. You know, probably have sat around a lot in their lives. Probably sat around a lot in their lives, you know. So again, they haven't developed a strong sense of roots with the earth. They're not really healthy animals. They're just healthy white women in that way that you can be well adjusted to a sick society without technically being well, right? And that's key is the word adjustment. Humans adjust. So I said if you live and grow up in denial or in a religion, which is the same thing, or if you have an alcoholic family, same thing, you grow up in denial, right? It's not so much even alcohol poisoning, it's denial poisoning, right? You are strongly conditioned, right? I had a 19, 20-year-old girl at this one store I don't go to anymore, who was conditioning me to answer to a name that my mother and father didn't give me the second time I met her, right? Attempting to condition me to answer. And the last time I was there, she came up behind me and stalked me as I was leaving and called me this name. And I stopped and looked around and said, "How's it going?" And then turned back. And there was an elderly man in front of me that for some reason had stopped walking also. Because he said to me, "I thought maybe she was talking to me. Is your name?" Right? So she's hailing me, essentially, with so much aggression and so much force that the man in front of me stops also. Think about that. And he's just coming through. So it's like men may be looking for a little excitement, trying to condition me to answer to me. I'm a strange man who's almost 3 times her age. That's sexually precocious. And the timing was running out that I didn't even step foot on that property anymore. I'm so happy with myself. I'm very thankful. I said to my mom, I said, I didn't say I've got 2 women to sexually assault me. I just said, that woman there treated me as though I'm homeless. That's right, yeah. I said, I love it when people treat me in a way where they don't know who they're really dealing with. And so I could really mull over the agitation and the trauma, the humiliation, the infidelity, and the mental illness in that situation, in those people that don't even know who they're talking to, aren't addressing a man appropriately, don't have good energy, can't be expected to know that, and to begin to tell them would be to stir up a violent scene and make them feel scared of you. And then there'd be another white woman who's scared of you walking around. And that's all she'll do. She'll just be scared. Like, oh, I'm scared of that man who told me off for doing nothing. Right? Except that he has a right to not like how you're talking to him. But because they're filled with love and light, how could anyone not like that? Right? But what is love and light? It could be anything. I could shit in your face and call it love and light. There's no moral standard for love and light. Right? At all. Right? I was sexually assaulted and threatened with murder by a gay man I went to high school with in the name of love and light. It's like Christians. You can do anything in the name of love and God. It doesn't mean anything except in your own mind. Yeah, that's nice. Isn't it? So you're not really standing. When a woman is sexually assaulting a man, she's not standing on the same earth as he is. It's not equality. You see? Women talk about equality. Sexual assault is not equality. It's an unequal moment. Right? Where a woman has control over a man. Where a woman gets to make a man uncomfortable. And it doesn't exist in reality. That is an incredibly dominant and dominating force in society. Is the number of things that women can do to men and children that are not bad in reality. That have just been constructed and are increasingly being constructed by a kind of quasi-intellectual intelligentsia of seemingly femininely oriented ideas to preserve and protect and advance the rights of women, as though that includes everyone else, which, if done properly, it would. Okay? It's actually a form of black magic. Right? When someone talks to someone of the same class or who are equal, you're treating someone as equal, regardless of anything else, you're just talking. Hey, how's your day going? Good. Yeah. And what I find is that when a man is in the wrong coordinates, the wrong set of coordinates in space and time, with respect to surrounding vaginas of any kind, is that violence happens. So what happens is a man has to keep his testicles out of certain coordinates in space and time at all times. He could be standing anywhere on the earth, and if it's in the wrong space and time, which fluctuates from day to day, someone with a vagina could sexually assault him. And that's what you should tell young boys. If your penis is in the wrong coordinates any time, which fluctuates from day to day and moment to moment, no matter what any woman says, right, then you can be sexually assaulted, and they're allowed to do it. It's the law. It's the law of the psychotic woman in the psychotic world. And so men suffer all kinds of conditions where women can do whatever they want, and men can't do anything back. The whole system is skewed. It's not pro women's power and happiness, it's pro women being aggressive at every opportunity to men, as though it's not even a thing. It's not even a thing. So I take everything that women do around me and I learn to compare. So it helps to have positive experiences, obviously, which I've had in this area recently. When you have a positive experience, it's like spring and winter. It's like a summer day compared to the coldest winter on the earth. It's so different. Even if both people sound positive, both women sound positive, the people who are positive feel completely differently to the ones who just think they're positive, the women. It's a completely different feeling, right? Right, so there's this woman in the park, I call her Tweedledee, and we had a positive conversation. But she is negative whenever I see her. She is a very negative person. Not in that sense that she's being negative about life, but she's just a very negative energy, very heavy energy, lots of inertia. And you'll see that with big women sometimes. It's like it's not so much that they're overweight, but they have so much inertia to their mind. It has so much inertia. It's so immovable. So they can stand there and people have to walk around them. It's not because they're fat. It's because they have so much mental inertia. They don't have the courtesy to move out of the way. They just don't care. They're like the big Buick at that point. It's like they have a disability. Their disability really is a lack of courtesy. It's not because they're so fat, right? Men or women. Thanks. Now, if either of those women had asked me why I was standing there, well, it was none of their business, right? Because you can stand anywhere. I'm wearing clothing, aren't I? Right? I'm clothed, and I'm standing at a certain place in space and time. But the problem is that there's vaginas nearby. Because there's vaginas nearby, it's not as safe a place for me in space and time. When the vaginas are gone, it starts to get safer. And I learned that as a child, like in elementary school. Right? I was never safe around vaginas. In fact, my kindergarten teacher and the first secretary of the elementary school both made their vaginas a very prominent part of my life and that of my classmates. And I won't go into details. So being near vaginas, I learned, at least in Canada, was a very dangerous thing to be. I would advise men to stay away from vaginas because there's almost nothing you could hold women to. You might as well just say they're vaginas. The vaginas are beautiful, they produce children, but when you're near them, somehow bad things can happen. Maybe it's just a kooky religion, but I find that something about people, I don't know what else it is. It just seems that I know that there's vaginas around whenever violence is happening to men. You ever notice that? There's always a vagina nearby. It's like if you were like some kind of ace detective on TV, eventually you'd be like, I got it. There's a vagina. They use their special computer and it's like, I've correlated, sir, everything about all these crimes, and the only common element is that there was a vagina at every scene, you know? And whenever there's a male victim from sexual assault and whatnot. And so when you live in a society where vaginas can be aggressive to men and it's not considered aggression, that means there's a no contest situation. Women, like any police officer, can take violent initiative and there's nothing you can do. They get a free couple cracks at you, right? They get a crack and a crack. Now if they crack a man in public and he says, hey, fuck you, it's like nothing's happened until he said, fuck you. And this is what happens with all sexual predators in families and cults, right? So your fuck you was the first thing that happened on record, not whatever they did to you. That doesn't exist, right? So it's a no contest situation. They have an absolute right, women, to have one or two shots at any man or child, and no one can do anything about it. And men know this. Women get a few shots. You can say, hey, watch it. They can do it again. And then there's some women who'll just keep doing it until the man can't take it anymore. And then he ends up in jail, right? Because he doesn't realize he can't control himself. No one can. There's a lot of men who are abusive and they say, hey, don't hit. It's not doing anything for you and your family. But there are a lot of men, by the time they hit, they just didn't realize they were with a sick female. And because they were within a certain proximity of a certain vagina at various times, if they behaved as though they were a real person with real feelings and real boundaries that feminists say is equality, then they'll be put in jail or escalated violence will be upon them and they can lose other aspects of their safety that they haven't already lost. And that's a fact in the world. That's a law. Women all have that power in the Western world, right? White people. Oh, chilly today, eh? Oh, all right. Oh, nice.
We might leave Thursday.
Yeah, so women, and not all men, but they get a crack. And you can be sure that any man who is vulnerable has probably encountered women, either in the social services system and whatnot, who've taken a few cracks at him. I've had it when I was on welfare. I had a woman take a crack at me. Really cost me money, cost me time, just because she could, right? I'm not a bad guy, right? Just because I had my own thoughts about what I wanted to do with my life. That was it. There's no other. I exercised my rights. That's all I did. Right? And you just accept that. As a man, we learn that women can hurt us. We are the unprotected ones, the undesirables. If someone's to be afraid of a stranger, especially if the stranger is male, you think, oh, it's even worse. But chances are, if a stranger's a male, he's more likely to have been sexually assaulted more than a strange female by females. And so women who are nervous about men, in a sense, should be. Because chances are that man has been raped and sexually abused by someone with a vagina, and multiple people with vaginas. Like, the chances are actually quite high, especially if he's by himself, especially if he's homeless, right? Especially. So what do you think? Instead of thinking about yourself, think about that male. Think about being extra respectful to him, right? That's what I do. I meet males like that all the time. No problem. But a lot of men don't know they've been sexually abused, even raped. Because society, again, run by female magic, if not by women, says that men can't be raped. That if a man is raped, he's lucky. It means he gets to have sex. No one ever says about a female rape victim, but you got to have sex, right? Right? And so, or if you want to say that it's because of vaginal tearing, then you're saying that the only thing that makes something a rape is the tear of a woman's vagina and nothing else. In which case, once the vagina heals, the rape is over. And it only has that physical extent to it, right? Do you think it matters to a woman who's raped whether her vagina leaves any physical evidence of being raped? Do you think that it's only rape when the vagina is injured in a way that a forensic pathologist could prove and take pictures of? Is that all that rape is? Fascinating. I'd love to hear more about people's creative ideas of utter schizophrenic stupidity, right? So you have to be careful with your thinking, right? When you say that a man can't be raped, just because there's no vaginal tearing or anal tearing, right? I had a spot on my penis for years, and I knew exactly why. Because a woman who had already started to micromanage the environment, because I knew some, I didn't know enough about how these women operate, and they're just a normal woman, right? And this type of sexual predator, and my dad is a sexual predator too, and they micromanage people. They want to micromanage their victims, right? I get to be as angry as I want, and if you don't like it, you're just a poo-poo head, right? Let me manage you. Don't worry. Just stop worrying about it. Let me manage you. Let me manage you. Let me manage you. Let me manage you. Oh, you shouldn't be upset. Oh, that's nothing. Let me manage you. Oh, that's that. Oh, that's that. There was a point where some of her Qigong students asked a question of me in private around her presence, and she answered for me about my own family, about my own life, about my own decisions about where I was going to live. Everything. This woman had crawled into my bed one night and sucked my dick until I came in her mouth. And then she swallowed it and went to bed. After I told her repeatedly I didn't want to have sex with her. Ever. Okay? A week later, she's out of the country. She calls me to tell me she thinks I have sexual problems. Right? Micromanaging, projecting. Then she comes back and tells me, after other events have gone, I won't go into, being sexually assaulted by other friends of hers, telling me that I project on people and then I start to attack them. And after that, her and her friends started to become more dominant, more aggressive, more ambivalent to my well-being, while asking me more and more favors, right? And not having any conscience whatsoever. Right? This is what? It's a sick person, right? It's a very sick person. This is a person so completely ill, and yet they've lived in light and love all of their lives. They've lived in what they would say connected to the most divine love in human existence all of their life. And the most wonderful masters who all have intelligence to do with infinite love in every way, and health in every way, and goodness in every way, and dealing with pain in every way, and to make everything better, right? This is a woman who thought that music done by a nice man I knew, beautiful music from a classically trained guitarist, was too depressing for her, and didn't consider it music because she only listened to Jewel and Hindu mantras. You know, this is their thinking, right? And I know what you're thinking, right? Crazy. Why are you living with this person? Exactly. And what really interests me is the threshold between when was this normal and when wasn't this normal? At what point was this person a legitimate roommate, and which point were they not? And what happens when you're around these people who have no sense of right and wrong? That applies to the worst types of ways that they affect and impact other human beings. And that they can't relent. They can never relent. They can never go back and say, oh, right, that was a mistake. Right? And they had an opportunity, and they were almost given an opportunity by other violent people around them to eliminate your concerns and just make a decision like your concerns are nothing. You know, it's interesting. Sexual predators, they eliminate the victim's feelings. Did you know that? Yeah. They eliminate the feelings and needs of the victim. Something. Yeah. Sexual predators, or any kind of predator, eliminates the needs and feelings of their victims. They just eliminate them. They're just like, shut up, they're nothing, you're wrong. And the more women are involved, it's easier to do that to a man. Right? See. So these people who can be radically spiritual are radically violent as well, because their spirituality hasn't worked. It hasn't really made them healthy. It's actually just kept them in the same place all of their lives, in their positive, loving space, helping people, this, that, or the other, but never really growing past their shock, not even realizing they're in shock their entire life. Never really, you know, they'll cry, they'll have healing insights in their life, but there's just something there. I think, for me, I guess personally, when I see people who are overly aggressive, when I see men who have succumbed to the passive aggression of their lives, physically, mortally, I take it seriously. I take all aggression seriously. I sort of have to. Maybe it's an occupational hazard. I take it with the most seriousness. when a woman glares at me, when a woman makes me feel uncomfortable. It doesn't matter what she's saying, doesn't matter how polite it's supposed to be. Trust me, when someone doesn't make you feel good, they're not trying to be polite. Okay? Let's not beat around the bush, okay? When someone makes you feel bad, that's not being polite. It doesn't matter if they're trying to be polite. They're not trying to be polite. They have an agenda. And a lot of these women are betas and followers, you know. And the greatest intellectual achievement of their lives is to put endless pictures of light and love on their Facebook stream. And you go through all these Facebook channels of women, try to find any thought of any real lasting intellectual value in life and in reality. You'll never find it. Well, men or women, anyone on Facebook. Try to find any coherent thought that has to do with the reality of human existence. You'll never find it, ever. These people are not living in reality at all. They're posting things, and patting each other on the back, they're having little cults and religions and groups. There's no reality there. Oh, just gonna see if that woman is behind me. What's this? Yeah, so I've been feeling attacked lately, and sure enough, Stalker sent me something in the mail again. I'm not gonna go pick it up. And strangely enough, they didn't use my address this time, either because they want me to go out and get it myself to make it harder to throw away, or I don't know what, or on the off chance that I've moved, they want to make sure that I get it. And it's like, okay. And or another malicious agent. Needless to say, I would never pick up a parcel for anything for anyone who doesn't know my name and my address. I've got to eat something. I'm getting a little lightheaded. Been walking for a while. Yeah, so a hard day. Started it taking the dog to the vet, clearing out his bowels, and then give him some medication to keep his bowels working better. I told him, oh, that's good. I see. Please, calm down. Calm down. Yeah. You okay? Where are you going? Are you warm enough? And what are you doing? Just bathing in the sun too? Hey. So, a lot of women are perverted sexually. I've stopped shopping. I don't know. I've lost count of how many places I've stopped shopping due to being sexually assaulted by female employees. And I'm just like, so I go to this gas station now that's run by men, young men, and I go in there and everything is fucking tickety-boo. It's fucking every fucking time because there's no vaginas in there. There's no vaginas. When there's no vaginas on the property, everything's fine. Everyone behaves normally. The one day they fucking hire a female in there, I'm gonna fucking go somewhere else. I swear. And it's just for sheer self-preservation. I look back, I remember a gas station where I lived, again, young girl worked there, flirting with me, wanted to fuck me, and it's just like, every time, they either hate me, want to fuck me, they want to hop on my penis, they want to give me nicknames, they want to just like, holy fuck. How do these women think that someone can safely shop when you're fucking gushing your vagina or your fucking perversions over them every fucking time they come to buy a drink or something to eat, you know? It's just like, oh my god. Why don't you just hop on my dick now and get it out of your system? Just go get a bigger dildo with my name on it, for fuck's sake, and leave me alone. Like, don't they masturbate anymore? You know? Like, a strange thing is that if women actually thought about men in terms of men dealing with similar issues to women, which they do. Ever heard of that? Like, this woman down here presumed to tell me cosmic things about my life, right? One of these sexual predators and stuff like that. But she had never heard of a man being sexually harassed by a woman. She said she thought it only happened to women, and she laughed. That's how stupid she was. And she came through the Canadian university system with all these so-called spiritual people, all these women, and she doesn't know that men get sex harassed. Think about that. She's a prominent homeowner, prominent person in the healing area around here, and doesn't. That's the second woman I know, by the way, who has laughed at the suggestion that men are ever disadvantaged. Laughed at it, literally laughed in front of me, got up, said some sort of miraculous thing about me, and walked away after trying to offer me her personal contact information. Can you imagine that? Imagine if I talked to you as a woman, offered all kinds of powerful healing because of how enlightened I am, and the spirits that talked to her. But the spirits didn't tell her that men ever get assaulted by women. Apparently they didn't tell her that. Right? It's like, holy fuck. And so I really just combated the demon of this person just by sitting there. You know, you see it, like women, spiritual women are often demonic, and you can question the demon of their minds, question their thinking. Christians are often demonic when you start getting all Christian on you, right? Question their thinking, use logic, right? The Bible says that Jesus is not in fact the Son of God, which explains why he's like, hey Father, what's going on? Because it's written right in there. It's like a legal book. It's written right in the black and white. Jesus is not in fact the Son of God. It says it right there in the New Testament. Right? And yet all these millions of people have read this book so many millions of times, so many millions of sermons, and they will never ever acknowledge what's right in front of them. Because the entire thing is a whole fucking bullocks. It's all bullocks from beginning to end. It's always was bullocks. It's complete bullocks. It's complete bullocks in every way. And unfortunately, it has a lot of similar provenance to that of the global financial systems, penitentiary systems. It's like, anything that makes me angry could make me get angry at a woman, right? If you believe this way, and someone can get angry at a woman. And if I can get angry at a woman, that's not dangerous to women. That's dangerous to me. Oh yes, they could feel threatened and stuff, but the real danger is me, because when a woman is threatened, it's worse than when a man is threatened. If a woman feels threatened, whew, right? I had several women gang up and threaten me for a year and a half on public parkland on a sustained basis, right? Because I said no to their sexual advances. It happens more than you think. And YouTube deletes my channels for talking about it. Fascinating, eh? I just keep walking and keep talking. Nobody answering. There's a lot to be learned from female behavior to tell us about what women are really like. My sister's been stalking me for years sexually. I think that's pretty much her entire sexuality. It's preying upon me. I know she's some food. Beautiful day. I guess it's supposed to start raining later. Good. I really wish I had some more cayenne pepper. A place I used to shop had really good cayenne pepper. A number of the women who worked there decided to slander me and stalk me. Same time they should stalk you. What else was it? What do you think about it? Okay.